So, today's topic is on advice and information charities. So, really excited by today's speakers. So, we've got Kate Wallace, who's Chief Exec of Victim Support Scotland, and we are also joined by Stuart Pearson, who is Chief Digital Officer of Manchester Citizens Advice Bureau. So, Stuart's going to be talking a wee bit about how Manchester CAB use a range of tools for online advice and information. He's going to be talking about some of the really interesting stuff, I think, particularly around how they're using SMS and then some of the kind of chat technology like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, some of the bot technology. And Kate's going to be talking about the move to digital service delivery models, including live chat that Victim Support Scotland have been involved in. I think part of the reason we've also asked these two speakers, apart from the fact that they're doing really interesting stuff, is so Kate obviously works for a national body and has many local services across the country, and then the Manchester CAB and how that ties in with that national perspective. We thought it'd be quite interesting actually for some of you in the call who are working for national charities versus some of you working for more local charities, and actually what that relationship looks like, and it's something we'll maybe explore a wee bit on this call. So I'm going to get Stuart to go first because Kate's just literally just landed here and I don't want to put her in like the hot seat of being the first speaker. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart Pearson from Manchester CAB.
Hi, no pressure, world-class speakers. So, thanks, Siobhan. So I'm Stuart Pearson. I'm Chief Digital Officer at Citizens Advice Manchester. So I always have to do the Citizens Advice spiel about who we are and how we're structured. So Citizens Advice is a network of around 280 independent charities across England and Wales that offers free, independent, confidential advice online, over the phone and in person. So the strapline is whoever you are, whatever the problem. So just kind of going back to what Ross was saying, so the national team provide some of the infrastructure. So the national website is an amazing resource. That's two elements. One of it is kind of front facing, which is aimed at the public. And we get about 25 million visits a year. And that's obviously rising quite a lot, particularly over COVID. And on that side, there's loads of self-help tools. Woody's getting a guest appearance. So loads of self-help tools there. And the national team have done incredible work over the last few months, particularly as things have changed so rapidly. So nobody knew what furlough was, I don't think, before Christmas, and now everybody's experts on it. And as a network, we helped around 3 million people last year. So the local charities helping people directly across all those channels. However, 2/3 of that advice was still delivered face-to-face, which obviously has been a bit of a challenge more recently. So just really to speak about Citizens Advice Manchester. So we're one of the largest Citizens Advice in the network. We help around 50,000 people a year. And we're really passionate about providing frictionless access to advice. We believe that the quicker someone will access advice, the sooner they'll do that. And the sooner they do that, the easier it will be for us to help them with their issue. And that's obviously becoming more and more difficult as clients' expectations are changing. So I think Citizens Advice south of the border has a bit of an issue in terms of perception. I think it's perceived as a face-to-face service. In Manchester, we were keen to kind of move away from that. So about 10 years ago, we were about 90, 95, 96% of all our first point of contact was face-to-face, and we wanted to move away from that. So we used a brand new technology called the telephone that not many people had heard of. So we really invested in providing telephone advice, and now we answer just over 4,000 calls a month to people, which provides access to advice more convenient than having to visit a face-to-face drop-in. But in terms of those expectations, there's obviously a big move to digital, and I think more and more people are expecting that an organisation will have a decent digital access route. I think Gartner did that kind of survey, and 88% of millennials would use digital as their primary channel of choice in terms of accessing an organisation. And when we say millennials, I think that's anybody under 39. So we're not talking it's quite a large group of society. And people expect to contact organisations in a way they contact their friends. So it is about not just kind of corporate web chat platforms, but using those existing social media platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, where you've got billions of people using those messaging channels. So what we did in 2017 was just really test that, really using WhatsApp. So we provided WhatsApp as an access channel for debt advice. So it was kind of a bespoke pilot to see what would be the adoption rates, what was people's appetite for using that. And it was a huge success. So clients loved being able to use it. There was obviously that with WhatsApp, that feeling of obviously security, the end-to-end encryption really fed into the Citizens Advice kind of ethos. It allowed us to share documents as well seamlessly. And I think one of the key things, the key advantage of using a messaging platform rather than a live chat platform is that synchronous and asynchronous nature. So a client can send a message when no one's available, and then when we've got the resourcing in, we can answer that. And then you could have almost a live chat, but then again, if the client contacts us out of hours, that chat carries on. What we noticed doing the pilot was we were engaging with a different client group. So it was younger, and a lot of the clients, English wasn't their first language. So we'd obviously tapped into something where people were a lot more comfortable using digital, where English wasn't the first language, where they could use something like Google Translate to kind of cut and paste scripts, messages over to us. The only issue we had with WhatsApp then was the inability to scale it, really. We were kind of stuck with basically an advisor with a mobile using WhatsApp for web. So we wanted to carry on using an existing social media channel for advice, but what we could use apart from WhatsApp. So we decided to use Facebook Messenger as kind of the next best solution at that time. And again, it was really successful. So we kind of, rather than just being a debt service, we actually used it as a full access route. So Facebook Messenger has a really tiny bit of script you can cut and paste, put on your website, and it gives you kind of that live chat pop-up box on your website. So we put that on our site, and organically, no advertising, we now get 350 to 400 clients a month coming through using Facebook Messenger. Again, it was similar to the WhatsApp client group, so it was a bit different. So because it was a younger demographic, so 80% of the users were between 18 and 34, and 18% of those were under 25. So their issues were a little bit different. So predominantly for Citizens Advice, our two main categories are people with benefit issues or debt issues. Through this category, through the digital channel, what we found was actually employment and housing were two big inquiry areas, and that probably lends itself to that demographic where they're probably more likely to be affected, more likely to be in private rented sector housing and insecure employment. So it was really good, but what we did find out of that was actually, even though Messenger allowed us to do this kind of out of hours advice, there was an expectation that they would get a response out of hours as well. So as I was one of the Facebook admins, if I forgot to mute my phone, I would get a ping at 2 a.m. from a client saying, could you help me with this debt issue? And if I didn't remember to mute my phone again, there'd be another message probably 10 minutes later with a question mark about, why haven't you responded? So what Facebook Messenger allowed us to do was kind of test chatbots to provide clients with some kind of guided self-help, where we could kind of ask them a series of very basic questions and then send them to the right page on the national site. So we spent a few months testing chatbots and seeing, would that be a suitable? I think we were always open that this wouldn't be a replacement for humans anytime soon. But what we thought is, if we could get maybe 10-15% of clients to the answer to the need without the need for a human advisor, that would free the human advisor up to deal with those more complex issues. I think the first thing we found was actually advice is really hard. So it's really hard to replicate that with basic decision trees. So we just kind of focused on those kind of frequently asked questions, the big category areas, kind of, bailiffs' rights, universal credit, linking to working with the national team to look at the high category areas that get the most traffic on the site, really linking those two up. And we did find that about 10-15% of the clients who came through were able to self-help through the chatbot. And then what we did with the others was always made sure that there was a human handover. What we didn't want to do was have anybody trapped in some kind of chatbot loop of hell where it was, sorry, I didn't understand this, sorry, I didn't understand this. So as soon as the bot didn't understand it, it would just hand over to a human through Facebook Messenger. So whenever our humans came in, our human advisor, they could pick up the issue, and they would also have a transcript of what the bot had already captured. So we could then use the chatbot to do some kind of data collection. So front load some of those questions that you would ask anyway and get the bot to do that. So then when the human comes in, they can get straight into dealing with the issue. We definitely see a role for chatbots in the future as we kind of develop them around kind of automating kind of booking and cancelling appointments, maybe getting the status updates for kind of grants and any kind of appeal or awards. So it's something we definitely want to come back to and investigate further. We were very keen though with the success of Facebook Messenger. There was still really an appetite to kind of go back to WhatsApp, and because of WhatsApp had obviously in between the time of the pilot and now have really opened themselves up through WhatsApp for Business around using APIs to allow us to do WhatsApp at scale. So by using a third-party platform, you're no longer restricted to basically a mobile and WhatsApp for the web. So what we wanted to do was bring WhatsApp back, but we're obviously predicting there's going to be a big socioeconomic kind of impact of COVID, obviously, as we kind of look now, as we did those redundancy numbers announced last week starting to go up. So what we want to do is make sure our advisors are at full capacity. So we want to try and automate where possible any functions we can. So kind of the chatbot stuff and WhatsApp, we want to bring them back, but bring them back in a way where advisors are not having to use multiple different kind of platforms to answer different queries. So we wanted to kind of use one platform where we could have WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, the stuff we've done on chatbots, and then some of the stuff around SMS as well. So we looked at a number of solutions, and the one that jumped out really was Twilio. So Twilio, they have a charity arm as well, twilio.org, and what they offer is communications as a platform. So they actually they have this kind of modular platform where you can add something like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, SMS, voice, even video, all within one platform. So your advisor logs in and they would have a list of all the different chats across those different platforms and be able to kind of dip in and out of the messages. And you can even link that with your own CRM. So in that case, what that would do is allow that kind of one conversation, so the client only needs to tell you the issue once, because if it references your CRM and says, oh, this is Joe Bloggs referencing through that telephone number, you could look across the different channels and be able to have that look at the journey of the issue without having to go back and ask the client to repeat their story. So we've been using Twilio since April. It took us 2 weeks to kind of get that service up and running. So it's really, you'll need a bit of support from developer, but it is really easy to use. And because it's modular, you can kind of we'll do WhatsApp first, and now we'll add on Facebook, and now we'll do a chat bot. And the stuff around SMS. So again, for charities, it's really cheap, their SMS solution. So anybody is looking for SMS for appointment reminders, booking callbacks, it's been a great solution. And again, it's been really easy to use. They've got a module called Studio, which does kind of decision trees for you, where you can kind of say, if it does this, then again, go here. If it does this, go there. It's really good. You get $500 as a Kickstarter. So like I said, we started in April. We've not actually we've not actually been charged anything yet. We're still within that $500 limit for the SMS. And then there's a further 20% discount on their standard rates for all charities. There's just loads of potential in there. And again, we think that what that allows us to do, because it's modular as well, that if a new channel comes down the pipe in the future, we can then look to add that onto Twilio as well without having to start again. I suppose kind of the final thing really is video. That's the thing we're looking at the moment. We're trying a couple of pilots, because without face-to-face advice, there is some clients who kind of prefer that human connection that you don't get really over the telephone. So we've been looking at a couple of solutions. One of them is using Google Meet, which is anybody, if you use G Suite, that's Google's kind of video solution. But what we're doing with that is using their dedicated hardware and having those placed in partner venues that still have face-to-face kind of traffic from people. So I'm not sure in Scotland, but the Sure Start centres in England, we've been piloting in Sure Start centres in Manchester, and that's been a big success. So we kind of have a digital drop-in where we'll have the kit set up in an interview room. A client will kind of be shown into the interview room. They basically press a button on a touch screen, and then they're connected to an advisor who's working from home. And that's been really successful. And the other option we're looking at is Attend Anywhere, which I know the NHS in Scotland is using. And that we're thinking that might be a solution where clients we'll put it on our website, and clients will be able to kind of self-book video appointments. What we wanted, the ultimate goal is to have people think that whatever their issue is, when they contact Citizens Advice Manchester, that the solution we're offering feels tailor-made for them. So it answers the questions and solves their problems in a way that works for them, really. So that's kind of where we're up to. Hope it wasn't too rambly.
No, that was really useful, Stuart. Okay. Siobhan, I'm wondering, should we do questions after each speaker today, or do you want to wait until we hear both? Do you have any preferences?
Don't mind either way. We could do both.
Yeah, well, we'll take some questions for Stuart just now, and we'll hear it from Kate, and then we can more of a general discussion. There's one just coming from Jim O'Callaghan there, so he was asking, but again, this comes up quite a lot actually as a question. So, giving advice on WhatsApp and Messenger, how or where do you record client data and case details, and are you using specific CEB-based management system to do that?
So, we're talking about GDPR, is that the kind of the concept?
Yeah, Jim, I don't know if you want to stick your audio on and you can maybe give a bit more context if there's anything specific.
Hey Ross, thanks for that. Yeah, no, I'm just wondering that traditionally, whenever a client contacts an organisation, knowing, for example, housing rates, and I think ex-CAB in Northern Ireland used to use a thing called Karma. Client details, name, address, phone numbers, family, all that kind of stuff was recorded on that system for back referencing and so on, and for case counting, statistics, and reporting. And I'm wondering if it's done via, say, WhatsApp, what happens to that information? Is it recorded anymore? How does it transfer from WhatsApp onto Karma and so on?
So Citizens Advice use their CRM is called Casebook. So that's used in all Citizens Advice across England and Wales. So if a client came to us and then moved to Cornwall, that they could carry on that case if they came to us with a debt issue. So we do, depending on the issue. So there's a thing called simple query. So if a client just wants a bit of information, what's the number for shelter? We wouldn't record an information. We just give the client the details. However, if the client's got a more complex issue or requires, further assistance from an advisor where maybe they might be working with third parties or maybe working on behalf of the client, we will capture the client's details and that will be all recorded on Casebook. So we capture kind of the demography of the client, but also kind of the case details and the case notes. So that would then allow, again, if the client moved, someone to carry on that case. With WhatsApp, we'd obviously collect some information on WhatsApp, and at the start of every WhatsApp, because of GDPR, we kind of front load that we tell the client, that we collect data and this is our privacy policy. However, you need to be aware as well that WhatsApp, under their terms of service, will be collecting that information, because one of the challenges is if a client was to approach us with a data erasure request through GDPR, we could comply with that on our side, but we couldn't obviously tell Facebook to get rid of the WhatsApp data. So it's just making the client aware when they're sharing that data, who's got access to it. Does that answer your question?
Does that help you, Jim? Oh, you're on mute. I'll unmute you. I've asked to unmute Jim. I think we can't hear you because you're muted.
Yeah,
sorry.
Work out as a two-system type thing. So you'd give the advice in WhatsApp, and then you go on to the case management system and record whatever necessary data there is. There's no automatic transfer of data.
No. Yeah, no, there is obviously an element of duplication, and usually they'll cut and paste the transcript of the chat, but also actually do for our quality. We have quality of advice audits, so they'll also talk through what options were given and kind of the exploration. So there is a bit of duplication. Some of it it's going back to obviously kind of how Ross kind of said at the beginning, the challenge of obviously being a local citizens advice and the national team. So Casebook has APIs, but they haven't kind of opened them up to anybody. So so there is a challenge. There's great opportunities there, but at the moment, citizens advice are being quite prudent with those APIs.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe quite interesting actually for those of you in the room at the moment who are using live chat functionality, and whether it's kind of standalone platforms like WhatsApp or it's something a bit more bespoke on your site. If you've got any advice or any kind of best practice in terms of how you're dealing with duplication of data or integration of data using APIs, if there's any of that stuff, then do please put it in the chat box. I think there'll be other people in here who are going to find that useful. Okay, any other questions that have come through, Siobhan, that you've noticed?
No, not specific questions. I kind of had a comment on that, which was we often in digital expect there to be no duplication, everything to work smoothly and in line with each other. But if we kind of remember what would happen in the face-to-face world, an advisor would do all this information face-to-face. So the digital element there is removing some of that time-consuming typing stuff up, as Stuart said, you could copy and paste. So sometimes we expect too much of digital and things don't integrate exactly. But yeah, what struck me when Stuart was speaking, I'm not aware of Twilio at all, but the amount of integration that you're talking about in that platform seems fabulous. So to me, it sounds like a user could use whatever way suited them best to contact you, but then your advisors only have to log into one system. So my question then is, can the user change that method of contact? So say they contacted you on WhatsApp, but then they move to another device and they tend to use Messenger on that device. Can the user pick up the same conversation on different devices, or do they need to kind of stay with the way they contacted you first?
So I think the aspiration is the former, that the person could move across those channels and the advisor will be able to see that conversation across them. They've currently got a thing in beta called Conversations, which is supposed to do that very thing, but I think it is relying on your CRM being integrated, where then it could pick up either the phone number or the name or whatever to have an identifier that is the same person. And again, going back to the previous answer, certain devices haven't opened up those APIs, so we don't have the advantage of that at the moment. But yeah, there's lots of potential there.
Yeah, Tom has just put in a wee link there to Converse Social, which is the tool that Shelter use in England. And Shelter Scotland are looking to use that. Tom, is there anything you want to add just in terms of what that gives a user that they wouldn't get from just using the platform itself?
We have just started looking at it, so it would be remiss of me to start pretending to talk like an expert. But whenever I spoke to my English colleagues, it's sort of answers the question Jim was talking about, where everything's in one place. So you don't need to be on WhatsApp, you don't need to be on Messenger. The client's on those things, but everything's just brought through to Conversocial, and you can reply via that, and then there's an integration with the CRM. So that would answer our problems when it came to keeping all the information in one place. Because I just see if you're using WhatsApp, if you're using Facebook, you could get lost very quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's a really interesting tool, actually. What might be interesting, I don't know if you know the answer to this, Tom, I'm just going to make you the expert in conversation now, but even though you told me you're not. If they do charity pricing, it'd be interesting to know.
I'm sure Google would tell you if you put charity pricing in Conversation.
Fair enough. I kind of deserve that, to be honest. That's fine. Right. So if you want to know, just all Google it, and then you'll all find it. One of us will Google it in a wee second. Okay. Right. To avoid me being shot down by any more guests on this call, I'm going to hand over to Kate Wallace, who's Chief Exec of Victim Sport Scotland. Kate's going to talk a wee bit more about what she's doing. Kate's also got an advanced whiteboarding set up in the background that you can see there as well, that she uses for all our business meetings. I'll hand over to you. Okay.
Thank you. So thanks for inviting me. I'll do a bit of an introduction about victim support, but I think I've just seen some of the comments in the chat about the kind of skills around staff and volunteers, and I'll touch on a wee bit to do with that. A lot of similarities to what Stuart has said, but I'll focus on those bits as well. So Victim Support Scotland is a kind of national charity in Scotland providing support to victims of any type of crime, and that's whether it's reported or not. So you just have to feel as though you've been a victim of crime and you are entitled to a range of practical and emotional support from us. We have quite a small staff team, less than 100 head count now, but in normal times we would have hundreds of volunteers who provide that support. And I've been in the organisation for about 2.5 years, and when I first arrived it was very focused on face-to-face, a lot like Stuart had said. Office appointments, but also a lot of home visits as well. So a lot of volunteers around the country going out and about into people's homes. Half of the organisation is also based in the court, so we've got people in courts all over Scotland, and they provide support to victims giving evidence at the point of their trial. So what we've been trying to do since I came on board really was to move towards digital service delivery as part of a kind of new strategy. And the idea behind that, very much the same as Stuart was saying, is really about providing support to any victim, anywhere, a victim of any crime, in whatever method that they want. And I always kind of used the example of 16 to 24-year-olds when I first came in, and Ross will remember that. So 16 to 24-year-olds in Scotland, the highest risk, demographic at risk of victimisation. But what 16 to 24-year-old do we know who would want a home visit or come into an office appointment? It's just not going to happen. So we set about, just as kind of, we didn't have a separate digital strategy, but we created a new 3-year strategy that was very much with digital kind of built in, and moving much more towards digital service delivery as well as face-to-face, because we wanted to make sure we were there for everybody. So we updated our website, completely changed that, much more around self-help tools, and really created the website from a point of view of if you're a victim who needs help, rather than the kind of traditional style of, you know, trying to suit loads of different audiences all on your homepage type thing that we were all used to. So we went down that road. We've got live chat on there as well that is humans at the moment, and we've always had a phone helpline, a free phone helpline, which runs till 8 o'clock at night as well. Now obviously the face-to-face stuff has kind of gone, so what that really allowed us to do was to accelerate our digital strategy in a way. We already had kit out to people, we had people working from home, supporting over the phone. We'd already brought in things like Microsoft Office Suite, so, Office 365, so Teams, with video conferencing facilities, all that kind of stuff. Oh, here I've got a dog coming and all, sorry. What are you wanting this? So we were already on that kind of trajectory. So we were able to kind of roll all of the stuff out to help staff and volunteers really quite quickly. And I think for us, the issue has really been about that kind of pace. So we are, for example, we almost completed the setup process for NHS Attend Anywhere, because you can set up as a separate organisation on that in Scotland if you're a charity. There was some hoops to go through first, Stuart, just for you to be aware. You needed kind of 2 NHS referees, but we managed to just kind of jump over all of that and get the Scottish Government to agree that for a whole group of charities together. And we just put the Cabinet Secretary's name as our NHS sponsor, and that seemed to work. So we've got some learning around that. There is a bit of kind of techie stuff that needs to be involved in that, but we do have the video conferencing facility on Teams. It's just if you've not got the Teams app, it's not that brilliant, we're finding. So we're hoping that the NHS Attend Anywhere one, because people will be used to using that for their GP and stuff like that, that will be better. We've got, as I say, the live chat as well. And what we're looking to do kind of post-COVID, I suppose, is continue with very much a blended model. Yeah, we will be bringing back in face-to-face. I mean, how, you know, the timescale for getting back into people's houses, I'm really not sure. But we are looking at setting up our offices at the moment for socially distanced face-to-face. And obviously the courts are back as well. But we do want to continue on with this very much a kind of blended model, with people being able to access support in whatever way suits them at whatever point. So we are also looking at omni-channel solutions, which obviously Stuart's talked about. Twilio is one of the options for that. We've got also a new CRM, which in hindsight, really the delays on that project really didn't help us because it came in June this year. So there's been quite a bit of kind of a change for staff and volunteers, and I would say that that's the big bit of learning for us, is that the demographics certainly of our volunteers, the model with which they were used to working, there are many of them that have really struggled with moving over to this approach. We've put in loads of training, loads of support, but I reckon if we're lucky, we'll come away with half the volunteers that we had at the start of this at the beginning of the year. Very quickly, when a combination of technology and also the way that the situation was going in the courts prior to lockdown, we lost 3/4 of our volunteers overnight. They just didn't want to work with us any longer. So we're trying to get them back, but obviously for some of them it's just not going to be for them. There's some people just, they don't even want to provide the support over the phone, which is the vast majority of what we're doing just now. Even that doesn't suit them. So I think we're in a phase of a whole new challenge around volunteers and recruitment drives and different types of volunteers. But for sure there's big challenges around. I see that somebody asked the question, Helen, in the chat around upskilling. The chat methods, the live chat, we've got some good learning from organisations like Adaction. We learned quite a bit from them about how you can, the type of language you would use, and just to try and kind of, there was a perception among some of our staff and volunteers that you had to be a certain age group yourself to be able to use it, and if you didn't know the lingo, then you wouldn't manage it. But we've managed to overcome that, and we've got kind of guides and tools to help people. The issue as well is about resource allocation, because even when you've got an omni-channel in place, the thing that you have to remember is, certainly for live chat, and there's more of these tools come on board where people are expecting an instant response, as Stuart says, you've got to kind of make sure that you've got teams that are operating alongside each other in parallel. So I know that that's been a challenge for some charities just now, particularly where they're struggling to get their volunteers back, or in some cases, some charities have stood their volunteers down altogether and haven't brought them back. So having the resources to actually have a live chat team when it's humans running alongside, because we can't have, for example, our helpline team doubling up with the web chat team, because if you're having a live chat conversation, you need to be able to do that in real time and not interrupt it by going and answering a phone call to someone on the phone helpline. So it's thinking through those types of things that we've kind of really learned, and I think that's, I like the sound of Twilio, because the modular bit where you can just add a bit in and add a bit in and see how you go. So yeah, so that's where we're at with it. I was just wanted to kind of touch on, as I say, the kind of resource and staff and volunteer issues that run alongside it, because I would say for us that's been the biggest challenge. Was there anything else, Ross, that you wanted me to cover in particular?
Well, I mean, the only other thing actually I was quite interested about, I don't know what you can or can't say about it, is there's a theme that's been coming up a lot in these calls, is either we've had national charities who have got lots of local services, or we've had people who are a local service that's part of a bigger national network. And I think COVID has exposed for a lot of people some of the fragility in how that relationship works in particular. And, so we've had some really nice examples where like small local charities who are like, we only support people in North Lanarkshire, and now we've got clients, like literally one of them on a call, globally people accessing their online services. and it's kind of, that's in a nice place to be. But if your memorandums and article and your relationship with a national body is built around we support local people and that's our role, but suddenly that whole model is exposed and changed, I'm interested from your point of view what that looks like, or where those discussions have even got to.
Well, for us, I suppose it was a slightly easier in victim support because it used to be local associations that were independent.
Yeah.
But that all changed probably about 20 years ago. So it's now a national organisation, and those, and I suppose it was just kind of, it was ageing really. A lot of the people who'd set up some of the local groups retired, really stepped away. So the kind of power dynamic kind of shifted, and what then happened, and there was obviously financial issues at that time as well. So the local associations were asking for a national body to be constituted. So that happened, and that's meant that there are slight variations that happen locally, but we are a national organisation with a kind of national expectation, and in fact, where our kind of challenge is at the moment is, for example, the helpline, the live chat, that's all staffed by a central team. But and because of some of the challenges around volunteers and also some of the opportunities around technology, because we've not had people coming in and sitting in effectively a call centre environment, we've been able to push the phones out, and we've been able to push the live chat out to people being able to do that locally. So we're testing a process at the moment, which is that each of the local teams take a day a week to run the national services, if you like, and that's purely because of demand and volume, with the court starting back up and the level of chaos that's going on around that at the moment. It frees up the national team to try and organise the court referrals and get them into a place. So we're working on that at the moment, and I would say the challenge for us around that really is, because I would quite like, if I'm honest, there always to be that kind of, I like the idea of being able to run it virtually rather than bringing everybody together into one big kind of call centre environment. So, but the challenge is around culture, still really around that, to be honest. So it's early days for us, but we're going to go live with that as of Monday, so I can feed back to you and let you know how it goes. But I've just hit that one kind of head on, this thing about people were asking if we could disaggregate it all into local, chunks. And I've just said, look, that the admin time involved in that would be massive. And of course, because we're a nationally constituted organisation now, I don't have the issues about, articles of association or anything like that any other charities might have. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful. Yeah, there was a question came in about the name of the organisation who gave tips for a live chat, and it was Add Action, who are now called We Are With You. So they've rebranded. So if you're looking for them online, We Are With You is the new name for Add Action. But they've been running live chat for a number of years now. And
I'm happy to share the guidance that we produced as well for our folk around the live chat, because we've got some people who really love doing it. They're really invested in it. They really like doing it. They're really happy with it. So that's been good.
That'd be great. Yeah, Siobhan, that'd be really good and really useful, actually, I think, particularly for some of the people on this call. So it's one of the areas people struggle with is, I think, some of the live chat stuff, people try and overprotect it and they get themselves tied up in knots about what it's going to look like in the security and how we onboard people, to the point where they often never do it because they're so terrified of actually launching it. And then some people just dive in head first without any safeguarding. So there's something in the middle, but if you can use someone else's processes, that's really useful. Okay, any questions for Kate? I'm conscious she stopped speaking, then I just asked all the questions, so I'm sorry. Has anyone else got any questions for Kate?
Okay. I was just wondering if Kate had looked at chatbots, just as you were saying there about that kind of move from national to local service. I'm wondering, is that just like a really simple use of a chatbot to literally find out what region people are in and send them to kind of the local service, and that's like the first step of integration?
Yeah, I mean, we are thinking in a slightly different way though, I think, because you get quite a lot of informational queries, so people just looking for where to find X on your website. I can see it having more of a use for that. I think one of the issues that we have around the local services is the hours that they provide a service, are they're not all providing a service till 8 o'clock at night, or we could do it kind of during work hours, but I think we would have to be careful around that, around an expectation of an immediate kind of response, a bit like Stuart was saying. Because, and we do get, as other organisations will as well, people who are in, one of the other things that's happened for us during COVID is the number of safeguarding concerns, particularly around people who are suicidal, has just rocketed. We saw a 400% increase between March and April in that, for example. And that's kind of the, the slight concern, is to make sure there is always a human at the other end somewhere, just in case someone is in such distress. So yeah, but yeah, definitely. I mean, it'll be a challenge for the organisation, the chatbots, for sure. Ross spoke at our conference, I think, a couple of years ago now on it, and yeah, it was like. But I think now that we've got live chat in, people are starting to see the benefits of it, as I say as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I really liked what Stuart had said about the chatbots feel like a percentage of the calls, but there's always the option to speak to a human, so people don't end in that kind of never-ending stuck talking to a computer loop.
Yeah.
So we'll go over to Nick now. Nick has a question for Stuart, if you want to unmute Nick.
Yeah, thank you. I was really interested, Stuart, in what you were saying about Twilio. It sounds really interesting. I hadn't known about it before than what you've just said, and a little 10-second glance at their website. I'm wondering, have you ever used any of the voice capabilities that Twilio has? Does it integrate with your calling system so that you've got calls and other channels of communication in one system? And I'm asking because we've just been piloting a kind of a phone support system using Teams, and the voice calling functionality in Teams, but it doesn't tie in with anything, and there has been quite a hurdle for some of our volunteers to get onto it. So I'm actively interested in other systems.
So again, the running theme of national and local. So the national service provides the telephony platform, unfortunately, because it's not that good. But with Twilio, because we got some funding to do an out of hours service, we were able to test the voice offer that Twilio has. So it does do voice, and it works really well. Right. So obviously in the evening we've got agents logged on, and they can take obviously a WhatsApp call that might have come in during the day, or they can take live phone calls as well. Brilliant. So and you don't need, like a lot of contact centers, you need to assign a DDI number. With Twilio, you don't. It basically, whatever number is the presenting number that you give to clients, it just comes through and converts your PC into a soft phone. So there's not a need for a dedicated DDI number for each agent.
Right.
If that makes sense, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Okay, any other questions from the room? Okay, what I thought might be quite a nice thing to do to kind of finish up on, just to, I guess, see some of the issues that you're all facing. So given that the focus of today is on advice and information, I'd be interested particularly on advice and information, and even if you're not set up as fundamentally an advice and information charity, what has been your biggest challenge around advice and information? And it could be about deciding how content needs to change during COVID. It could be about implementing a tool like live chat. It could be about retraining staff or volunteers. And we're going to do what we usually do. So I'm going to ask everyone to type it in the chat box. And then when I say press return, if you hit return, and we'll just see what's coming through. So what's been your biggest digital issue specifically around advice and information? It could be one of the themes that we've picked up through our two speakers today, or it could be something else that's a bit more left field. Okay, we'll take 1 minute to do that, and then we'll get everyone to press return, and we'll see what you come up with. Okay, right. Press return if you're still typing, then finish off, and then we'll see what you come up with. Okay. I'll get you to help me, Siobhan, to kind of wade through these because there's lots coming in thick and fast. Any in there so far that stand out for you, Siobhan?
So there's a couple that are that safeguarding question again. So for those, we would always refer people now to the Catalyst DigiSafe guide, which is a huge safeguarding guide that takes you through safeguarding issues step by step. And even if you've kind of moved your service on and you've considered those, it's always worth revisiting that guide again. One I put in myself for a charity that I work with, and I see someone else has, is that service users don't have English as their first language. So just that whole process around writing a text-based question can be quite difficult for some service users. Any in particular you want to pick up on, Ross?
No, I think, I mean, so there's someone talking about, so Patricia was talking about reaching non-digital clients. And I think that's something to be thinking about, is just understanding your user base. And so when we're talking about this stuff, we're not saying that this is a kind of one size fits all, but being very open-minded and thinking about the techniques you're going to use to understand what your users are using right now and how you'll fit within their lives. It's interesting actually, because the example that Kate gave from Add Action, actually one of the biggest surprises from them, the client uptake, was an over 50s demographic. And actually, you know, it'd be easy to say, well, we need a younger demographic and therefore we're going to move to live chat, for example. And for a lot of charities, that'll be the case. But actually what they found is that over 50s demographic were less likely to turn up to a face-to-face addiction support group in a physical setting. They were much more likely to use an anonymized online service than a younger cohort was. So again, asking your users, but also testing some of this stuff, and making sure you've got a way of capturing those demographics. So the Add Action example, when you go through the live chat process, at the end of it, it will ask you some questions like, you know, which age group do you fit in, what's your postcode, so any of that kind of stuff. And you can either put that at the front of the call or the end of the call, and just giving you that kind of rich picture of who's using it and what ways they're using your service. Yep, the kind of skills of staff and volunteers are a huge one. I mean, I don't know, Siobhan, you remember we had someone on from Home Energy Scotland on one of our previous calls, and that was a big thing that's come up, is particularly if you've, you know, that natural move from someone who's staffing a helpline, so a telephone helpline or a face-to-face frontline advisor, and now they're providing support on live chat or other forms of text-based query. Those people might never have written something that's advice focused in a very, very long time, and they weren't recruited for that skill set. And I think people underestimate how big a leap that can be for a lot of people. So I think, you know, there's part of it is what training do those staff need, but actually as you're starting to recruit more people in future, you might be recruiting a very different type of advisor than you're recruiting at the moment. So there's something there about that kind of recruitment side of things.
Yeah, a similar point on that is encouraging staff to use social media as one of the things there. So yeah, that's something that I've found, and it seems to be quite an age-based thing, with different age groups of staff and volunteers wanting to use different types of social media. And quite often I'm finding the kind of 24 to 30-year-olds just don't want to be on social media at all. They're kind of anti-social media. So the advice there would be, talk to your staff, find out what they currently use, and you might find that there's one member of staff that loves one particular piece of social media, make them in charge of that area. Another member of staff might like a different platform, make them in charge of that area, and really utilize the skills that your staff already have. It's the same that we see in kind of looking at data and using your data in a better way to drive forward your charity, is find out which members of your staff love working with Excel and get them to do more of it. It's the same sorts of ideas. So it's almost the kind of stage to almost do a staff survey of what skills your current staff have that you're possibly not utilizing, that they were maybe using in their home lives, that could actually be really useful for your service just now. And they don't realize that that's what your current thought process is. Some staff might have those skills, some staff might be really interested in being trained in specific skills, and some staff might just not be interested at all. So you can really make your own lives easier if you identify who those staff are and what they currently have, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Content's coming up quite a lot in there as well. I think one of the things that we just tried to kind of reiterate throughout this process and throughout COVID is just trying to get charities to think about content as a service. And for me, that's really important. Stuart's having to leave the chat just now, which is totally fine. And just to quickly say thanks to Stuart before he goes, that was really, really useful. And actually some of those tools that you mentioned, Stuart, and the processes, I think there's a lot of people in the room nodding away that are going to pick up some of that stuff and find it incredibly useful. So thank you so much. That was really useful. Cheers, Stuart. I'll catch you soon. Okay, we will finish up shortly. Yeah, sorry, content there. So it's kind of come through the chat there. If you look on the SCVO YouTube channel, you can watch back the session we had in content with Sarah Richards, who wrote the book Content Design. Some really, really practical stuff from her in there, but just changing that way that people in your organisation think about content, and actually often at quite a senior level, is getting them to move away from thinking content on a website as a marketing tool towards content on a website as a service. So the content you're set, and so if I go on Kate's website, I might find the information I need before I go to a court date on Monday morning, and I can get that at 1:30 in the morning on a Sunday night. That has potentially more merit and usefulness to me than me trying to get an appointment to go and access a service in a week's time. So there are different touch points in that person's journey. It doesn't mean that one is necessarily better than the other. What it means is one is different at a different point in time with a different purpose, but they're both services. So just try to keep that in mind. I'm gonna bring on Lauren. Is Lauren still on the call? Lauren, are you still on the call? I'm looking through. Lauren, you're on the call, but with your video off, so you might be like making a cup of tea or something, but I'm going to hazard a guess you might hear me. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Lauren, in terms of Young Scott's approach to content, and I'm conscious that your teams that you're involved in often have to update stuff fairly quickly, so I don't know if you've got anything to kind of add to that.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm just making my lunch, listening at the same time. Yeah, I think like our biggest challenge has been definitely responding to updates, and I guess it's been a bit of a learning curve because we get the updates like as everyone else watches at 12:30 or 12:15 now, but yeah, I guess we've changed. Like before we were kind of waiting until things were happening and updating the website, just like getting everything ready, and as it's grown, I guess it's grown arms and legs as we've kind of created new articles, and it's turned into a bit of a beast. So just trying to make sure we take that time to stop and take down content that's no longer relevant, restructure stuff rather than keep adding to it. And also the last kind of update for phase 3, we basically knew what all the updates were going to be. So we just spent lots of time getting it all ready, but not publishing it, and then just adding in stuff that was confirmed like as and when, so we were a lot quicker at turning it around, because we had to originally change all the staff hours so that we could have people responding and get everything signed off. So it meant we had 2 members of staff doing an 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift. So we've tried to stay away from that now because it wasn't loved by all the team. So I think, yeah, we just tried to make sure that we are listening to staff, but also getting the information out there at the same time. Yeah,
that's really useful advice. I think it's something that the SCVO have been doing as well, as that kind of transition from what becomes a kind of COVID focused information hub to transition into mainstreaming some of that content in your site. I don't know if you've got any kind of quick things to add on that, Siobhan, before we finish up.
And really the main thing I wanted to add was to ask you all what your digital blockers are just now, maybe not even digital, what are your main blockers just now? What is it that your service needs to be able to continue moving forwards? Is there any specific DigiShift topic that you would like to see us cover? So if you'd just like to type, I'm starting to lose the will to speak, type that into the chat box, that would be really useful. We always try and tailor these to help you move forward and tailor them to you, really. Someone had mentioned in the chat that Ross asked you all to do about how to find out information that will affect users with COVID and how the world's changing. So there's 2 sources I'd recommend. One is our own website. We have a coronavirus information hub, So that gives you lots of information. There's a new guide in there on leaving lockdown and the things to think about in your own organisation, getting back to whatever normal is going to look like. So I've just popped a link to that in the chat now. The other one is Information Scotland, who do a weekly survey of charities across Scotland, and then they give the results of the issues that are affecting most of their members. And that's a really good kind of touchstone to see what's affecting other charities, and lets you feel like you're not alone, that there's other charities in the same boat. And they kind of give it a summary of useful help, so you can talk to people who are in the same sort of problem areas as you are. Another great source of information is the new Curve training sessions run by Ross's company, Third Sector Lab. So these are free 90-minute workshops, and they build your or your staff or your volunteers' knowledge of particular digital tools or processes. So we've had a lot of conversation today around upskilling staff or volunteers not knowing how to move forward in this new digital world. So those, the Curve training sessions can really help with that. They're free to anyone in third sector, staff and volunteers. So I've just popped a link for that in there. And the other thing to let you know about is Third Force News, which is our weekly newsletter, and they send out a bulletin across Scotland. So if you have any of your own events that you want publicised, they'll do that for you. So I'll pop a link into that, and you can add your events onto their event page. And back to Ross.
Perfect, thanks Siobhan. There's some really useful so just thoughts coming in from the chat in terms of people's blockers. So we'll gather this stuff up afterwards and we'll use it to influence any future events that we've got coming up. As Siobhan said, we've got our Curve training sessions. If you click on that link on the Third Sector Lab website, you can book those. So they're free for anyone who works for a third sector organisation. Each of them is 90 minutes long. It's quite a wide range of topics. We'll be adding the videos from previous sessions to the YouTube channel on the website probably this week. We'll get some of those up on there. Both our speakers are gone because they both had to leave early because they've got other commitments. So I'm going to say thank you to them even though they're not here, but that's okay. So a huge thank you. Yeah, clap for Kate Wallace and for Stuart Pearson. That was amazing. We'll get the video from this up on the SCVO YouTube channel to be able to watch that back, and we'll email out any resources to anyone as well. We'll try and get the live chat kind of guide stuff from Kate as well, and make sure we can get that out to people, because I'm sure lots of people in the room would find that really useful. I'm not going to ask Tom to be an expert on anything that he's not an expert on in future. That is like a promise from all future calls. I will also not pick on people who are making their lunch either. Our next one, Siobhan, is we're taking a break next week. What's our next date? Can you remember?
We are taking a break
6th of August,
next week. Obviously much needed, because Rhoda has commented on my accent today. So it's obviously very obvious I'm from Northern Ireland today, which is only obvious when I'm tired. So we are having a break next week. And then on the 6th of August, we're hoping to have one based around environmental charities and the work that they're doing. So mainly looking at the tools that environmental charities can use, but some of the tools that are coming out of that will be of interest to all of you. So I do recommend that you have a look when we publicise that to see if any of the tools are of interest to you. And then the following ones after that are really based on what you all want. So please do get in touch and let us know if there's any particular digital tools you want to know about, any particular problems that you're facing, or indeed any particular speakers that you want to hear from them, someone that you feel would be inspirational in the digital arena. And you can see from the previous speakers how amazing some of them are, including today's speakers, and Ross has pulled in speakers from across the world. So if there's anyone anywhere that you want to hear speaking in Scotland, do let us know and we'll try and get them for you.
I will shamelessly harass anyone globally. So if you have someone that you want me to hunt down, I will find them and try and get them to come on a call. Yep. Cool. Good luck. Thank you very much for everyone for coming today. I'm conscious as well, it's, it's summer holidays, so getting this many people on a call we're quite pleased with. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to come along. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. It's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank
Catch
you,
you all later.
everyone.
See you
Bye.
later on. Cheers. Bye.